shows the red planet could, to be sure, have created extraterrestrial life. Exhaustively, the stone is enhanced with some dim line tracks that contain iron and phosphorus. Furthermore, as it would turn out, such leopard spots on Earth are regularly created by microorganisms. So, have we at last found the microbial occupants of Mars? What ends can be drawn from this exceptional revelation? And could our adjoining planets actually be stowing away extraterrestrial living things? Well, incredibly, the possibilities of this are not at all terrible. Specialists have as of late found a huge repository of fluid water underneath Mars, which, in their assessment, could address a life-friendly world. What do Albert's theory of relativity and a shocking find on Mars have in common? That's right, in both cases, it's Einstein's Isle, a stone that has the exploration world holding its breath. But all jokes aside, what Perseverance found on the surface of Mars a couple of months ago does, for sure, have the potential to make it into the galactic history books. The main point, anyway, is that the NASA rover has been on Mars since February 18, 2021, where it is taking a close look at the landscape and rocks of the Jezero crater. And of course, this isn't just any randomly chosen landing and research site, but an area of nearly 50 kilometers in size, which was formed by a shooting star impact in the far-off past. Until 3.8 billion years ago, it still contained a fully mature crater lake with feeders. It is now undisputed that the cold fluid once sloshed in overflow on the red planet. However, the question of where all the Martian water has gone over time is somewhat more dubious, well, that is, assuming it has vanished by any means. Obviously, as a matter of fact, a new study has come to the historic conclusion that the water has in no way, shape, or form literally vanished immediately and inexplicably, but has simply moved underground. Yet more on that later. While Perseverance is inspecting the former stream delta in the Jezero crater, it's expected to gather material samples for transport back to Earth. On one hand, it will also search for potential hints of previous Martian life. And, as NASA declared in July of this year, the rover might have raised a ruckus around the town. Exhaustively, the rover ran across a very exceptional stone formation on the northern edge of the old stream valley of Nida that had never been seen before on Mars. All the more specifically, the object of interest is a stone around 1 meter long and 60 centimeters wide, which specialists named Shava Falls, and which stands out with some tail-like follows. This is now the situation with the expansive white sulfate veins, between which an unmistakably darker, ruddy material sleeps, showing the presence of hematite. This is to be expected in and of itself, as this iron oxide mineral is anything but interesting on Mars. However, this doesn't exactly apply to the many spots, a couple of millimeters in size, that are embedded in the dark hematite stores. And while the small spots appear as unpredictably shaped, grimy white dots, they are surrounded by rings of dark material. The most perplexing, complex, and possibly significant rock. Resulting investigations have shown that the dark rings contain iron and phosphate, and what might sound to us humans like just an exhausting list of land contents has the specialists totally alongside themselves with energy. Ken Farley of the California Institute of Technology emphasizes that Shava Falls represents nothing less than the first unequivocal proof of organic material on Mars. But that's not all. Simultaneously, Farley too describes the piece as the most confounding, complex, and possibly most significant rock Perseverance has inspected up to this point. This is for the simple but exciting reason that the colored leopard spots could indicate chemical reactions that microbial organisms use as an energy source. The spectrometer examinations showed that the spots and their surroundings contain organic carbon compounds, and along with the phosphates and the iron, they are significantly more suggestive of those traces that are frequently associated with microbial activity on Earth. Specifically, the earthly spot makers are often microorganisms that have, when fossilized, left their remains in the subsurface. Iron and phosphate are regularly produced when the microorganisms reduce iron oxide. And as mentioned, Shava Falls was found in an environment that was much wetter billions of years ago and, therefore, may have created the best conditions for microbial life to prosper. But what does the discovery of the stone mean in contrast? As Perseverance has now replied to what is apparently the oldest question of mankind. whether Earth is actually the only celestial body in the universe to have produced life, with a resounding no. Well, not exactly. In fact, the reality is that while organic particles on Earth often come from microbes, they can also be formed by geochemical abiotic means that don't require the involvement of living things. For instance, we know such compounds can be formed in the context of volcanic activity. And if the material from Shava Falls was also heated by magma, we would need to quickly rule out the possibility of tiny Martian inhabitants. In fact, a grain of the mineral olivine, which is considered a solid component of magma, has even been identified in the stone in question. But it remains complicated, because the mere fact that there was once volcanism in this region doesn't mean the leopard spots can't have arisen from microorganisms. The Martian mystery continues. As we can see, Shava Falls still holds many perplexing problems for us, and tragically, this won't change much soon. That's because the analysts point out that they have largely exhausted their remote sensing methods. At the end of the day, Perseverance has already bombarded the rock with lasers and X-rays, shot it constantly from each possible point to comprehend the mysteries the Martian stone truly holds. Researchers need to concentrate on it very closely, and that is only possible once the relevant tests have been taken back to our blue home planet. Yet, when the day of return transport has come, specialists will have the option to utilize high-accuracy scientific instruments to determine if we are truly dealing with the fossilized work of Martian microorganisms or simply the result of volcanic activity. And incredibly, it might be that Mars has, in fact, still not halted its volcanic activity, as indicated by seismic data from the Mars InSight mission, which has unequivocally suggested that magma chambers may still exist inside the red planet. But this is neither the only nor the most exciting mystery that Mars InSight has uncovered beneath the surface of our planetary neighbor. The test data also shows that a massive liquid water supply is concealed at a depth of 11 kilometers. And by massive, we really mean huge. According to the experts, the amount of secret water could be sufficient to form a planet crossing sea 1 to 2 kilometers deep. As briefly mentioned before, the question of where the water of the red planet has vanished to is one of the greatest mysteries of current Mars research. Until around a few decades ago, there were still rivers, lakes, and even a large sea there. But then, a great environmental change shut down the life-supporting part of Mars, and the waters vanished from the rosy, glowing surface. Since the polar ice caps and the water ice in the middle latitudes are not large enough to store all the water from the former Martian Ocean, many scientists have long assumed that most of the water simply vanished into space. After all, it should have been easy for the solar wind to grab portions of the atmosphere, and thus the cool water, into space due to the lack of a magnetic field. Now, anyway, Vashon Wright's team at the University of California in San Diego has reached the conclusion that the water loss can also be potentially explained in another way. The water might not have vanished by any means. Instead, it may have saturated the depths of the Martian crust. To test this intriguing hypothesis, the scientists analyzed data from Marsquakes gathered by Mars InSight in the Elysium region between 2018 and 2022. In fact, the seismological data had already revealed that there is scarcely any water in the Martian exterior at the corresponding landing site, but only down to a depth of around 300 meters. However, Wright and his associates literally looked further underground and realized that under the dusty, dry, cold surface of the planet, there is indeed a dripping mystery. Could Mars still be home to life? From one perspective, the investigations showed that the Martian core crust is, indeed, permeable and mixed with holes, as previously believed. On the other hand, the seismic data suggests that these fine cracks and fissures are filled with liquid water. In fact, these natural water tanks are probably going to make up around 177% of the rock there. Or, in other words, the gathered data can best be explained by the fact that the planet's core crust contains water in abundance. Well, for the sake of completion, it should be mentioned that this is only the case if the examination results are representative not just for the area of the Mars test, but also for the rest of the planet. But if so, and that's the interesting thing, the red planet could have an immense groundwater supply stored in its deep stone pores. Moreover, considering that the estimated amount of water in this situation is sufficient to flood the entire planet to a depth of 1 to 2 kilometers, another thrilling question emerges. Could extraterrestrial life forms be found in the underground water of Mars? Well, the scientists answer this question with a simple yet fascinating same difference either way. After all, we shouldn't forget that even on Earth, there are creatures that can survive even the most extreme conditions, like permanent darkness and a lack of oxygen. Michael Manga from the University of Berkeley, who was involved in the study as a co-author, can be quoted as saying, "Since water is essential for life as we know it, I don't see why the underground reservoir of Mars shouldn't also be a life-supporting environment." While we have yet to find any evidence of life on Mars, we now at least have a place that could, in principle, support life. And we now have a spot for you that would allow you to never miss another video from us again. With a single click, press the approval and subscribe now to stay up to date. From here onward, we'll see you soon.